Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with UK-based jazz guitarist and composer Dan Waldman. He spent some time with us talking about his new 2023 album called Greenpoint. This musician has paid dues in both Europe and the United States, performing as a sideman with many artists. Since his 2020 debut release as a leader called Sources and Angels, featuring Will Vinson on sax, Kassa Overall on drums, and Ryan Berg on bass, it's received some rave reviews, and he keeps on moving forward. He's got a lot to tell. Enjoy this interview. Hey, it was great to meet you. Thanks for taking a minute out today.
Yes, my pleasure.
So where exactly are you located?
Right now I'm in London. I've been back here from about 2016.
Okay. Well, before we get into Greenpoint, I want to know, how did you do through COVID? How did you survive that time period? And how does it feel now to have a new album that we're coming out of it?
The album was actually recorded before that. There was a couple recorded while I was in New York, of which Greenpoint was actually the first one that I recorded. So in lockdown, it gave me the chance to release one of those albums, which has the same sax player, Will Vinson, on there. So basically, that lockdown, it kind of, obviously you have to do something. So the best thing that I could do is, I've been trying to find a label to release that one. It's called Sources and Angles. So that album had Will Vinson on alto and soprano, and it had Kassa Overall on drums, Ryan Berg on bass. And I'd recorded the album, mixed and mastered it all in New York, but couldn't find a label who were going to promote it and release it. So lockdown, it gave me the incentive just to release that myself.
Talk to me a little bit about your journey in music. How did all this begin for you? How did the seeds of jazz get into you to become who you are now?
I guess I started from blues. Certain musical experiences playing with more experienced musicians, which encouraged me to stick with it. The first thing was just being into blues and playing blues guitar. But the only jam session I was able to go to, this is in Cambridge, England, was a jazz standards jam session. And you can imagine I'm trying to play blues and everyone else is playing changes. So I had to learn jazz, at least try to, get something together to be able to hang, to be able to play over the changes. So that took me into it. And I did okay as a kid. I got some, little awards and stuff like that. The newspaper here, Daily Telegraph, they did a Young Jazz Award. So that was encouraging. And I got to play with Nijo, which is the a national youth jazz big band. From doing that, I just gradually got into it, got some gigs, and met a few people, some of whom were at Berkeley, and encouraged me to go out there. I did an audition with Gary Burton, auditioned me actually. He gave me a scholarship. It was lucky because I just learned some of his music very recently before that audition for a gig in Cambridge with a sax player called Rob Hall. And he'd just come back from Berkeley. So I played a bit of Gary's music and I got to meet him and be auditioned by him and ended up in Berkeley age 18.
Back to your roots, who's been influences or what was the first live jazz show you saw that blew you away?
There's a jazz club in Cambridge called the Cambridge Modern Jazz Club down in a little basement called Flambards. And I remember hearing the Jim Mullen band. So if you ask Pete Bernstein about him, he knows who Jim Mullen is. They play gigs together now. I mean, when Pete was here last in London, they did a two-guitar frontline gig. Jim Mullen was the guitar player of a band called Morrissey Mullen, which is like a jazz funk, a jazz funk band in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. Yeah, Jim also played with Bob Dylan. I think he played with the Brecker Brothers. A very soulful, great jazz guitar player, plays with his thumb, unlike many. So Jim was the first guy that I really heard and enjoyed. He combined blues and jazz, very soulful approach, and the band were playing great arrangements to standards, as well as some original music of his. Also, my guitar teacher hit me up. He hit me up to Jim Mullen as well, lent me a couple of records of Morrissey Mullen. And I got to meet Jim as well when I first started playing. My guitar teacher had given me the homework of learning one of the tunes off Morrissey Mullen. And Jim actually still had the lead sheet for that in his gig bag. And he gave it to me. So basically I was able to go back to my guitar teacher, I think having played around 8 months or so, having learned this tune completely. Obviously the teacher was shocked. This is Chris Wong, was completely shocked. Didn't understand how I'd managed to work it out. So then I showed him the lead sheet, obviously, and he understood.
So how did your timeline work to get to where you're at now? Talk to me a little bit about, going to school, starting your career, and how everything kind of led to where you are now.
Okay, well, it does play in because Berkeley was where I met Matt Penman, who's the bass player on Greenpoint. Matt was there with another contingent of Kiwis. So the Berkeley thing, I mean, as soon as I got there, the experience was amazing because there was a lot of really great musicians there also studying. The Mason brothers had come from England. They were my friends who I knew from before. And then through them, I got in a session with Matt Penman on bass, with Steve Hamilton on piano, and Sebastian de Crome on drums. So I got to record with those guys pretty much as soon as I got there. And I just found the recording actually the other day. I'm surprised actually. It sounds okay. But yeah, Matt Penman was there. Choderos Avery was there, although I didn't really get to play with him. Antonio Sanchez was there at the same time. And the guys from Lettuce as well. So that's Eric Coombs, the bass player. He was there. Adam Smirnoff. Those guys they became very close friends actually. So I played with them a little bit in a band called Lettuce, which is still happening with those guys over there. And they're doing quite well. That's with a guitar player called Eric Krasno, who does Soul Live. And that was extracurricular activities for me at Berkeley, whilst in school, trying to learn about harmony, study with like Rick Peckham, great guitar player and teacher who works there. And I got to play some good ensembles as well. Those kind of experiences that you'd expect from a music college, but also obviously the musical relationships and friendships that came from that. For example, with Matt Penman, who, as well as being into music, is into cricket as well, which we share. I left Berkeley after around a year and a half. I got back to the UK in order to do an English degree, which was my last opportunity to get a free education out of the British government. I'd never intended to stay at Berkeley to do a full course, the full 4 years there. I was just trying to get as much information as I could and experience as well. And then just take that back and shed while studying for this English literature degree, which I managed to complete in around 2000. In that time in London, I got into a couple of other things, playing a few different styles, broken beat. I had a tune released on Acid Jazz that I recorded with Eric Coombs, the bass player from Lettuce. So I went to Cali around 95 and did that with Eric and his brother, did a tune that got released on Acid Jazz Records in 99. And then I was playing with another Kiwi, actually, who was at Berkeley as well, called Mark de Clivelo, a keyboard player and producer who works across a lot of different styles. And we had a residency at Jazz Cafe in London in the early 2000s. And I was doing a lot of playing with him. We did some radio, BBC, and some touring with his album Tides Are Rising. And a project called Free Soul Sessions, which featured a really great musician called Kylie Tatum. He's on the scene. It's broken beat new jazz, so you wouldn't count it straight ahead jazz, but he's very much influenced by the greats and a great musician in his own right, Kylie Tatum. Yeah, we're talking around. So we're getting to the late 2000s now, and I've been in a relationship since being in college, which broke up. And at that point, it was Matt Penman that said, "Get over to New York and come and play some straight ahead jazz." So I took his advice. And I got there around 2007 and 8, and that is when Greenpoint was recorded pretty much 3 months after I got there. That's the timeline into that album.
Talk to me a little bit about, in all of the things that go into being a professional musician, what do you like the best about it?
I think it changed over time. Originally, just the experience of having an instrument, going and playing, and being involved in playing music. It's something that's bigger than yourself, being part of a team. And it can take you away from, everyday life into a shared space of inspiration. That was one of my early experiences of playing music, which encouraged me to continue playing with, as I say, some more experienced musicians than myself, but having an experience where I didn't feel like I was actually having to think about what was happening. It was just happening automatically. So I'd say that was something that really encouraged me to keep going. And then hearing recordings back where, you remember something happened, but you didn't exactly remember what. And then, listening back, it kind of sounded okay, So that's the stuff that encouraged me at first to be in it. And then the challenge changed as it went on. You couldn't quite play by ear all the time. You needed to know some kind of harmony. as time goes on, it becomes more about learning specifics, learning tunes, being able to play over changes, being able to handle different musical situations, have good instincts, listen to what's going on and be able to respond, to produce a good result. Those are the things that attract me now, is when you've managed to achieve a good overall result at the end of it, where, maybe, unexpected things happen in the course of that improvisation, but you're all able to kind of work together to make something happen.
So, Dan, I'm a big fan of Greenpoint. I am wanting to make sure that we give you the proper due here to get the good business out. Where is the best place for everybody to pick up this album, to find out more about, any live shows, anything pertaining to your world?
Well, the only place where Greenpoint's going to be available at this point is my Bandcamp. I'm not doing a general digital release on it. There's other projects, as I say, that are going to be coming out on all platforms. But my Bandcamp is Dan Waldman, just DanWaldman. And you can just search Dan Waldman Greenpoint. Or Dan Waldman Sources and Angles, which was, as I say, the first one that got released out of the batch. Future ones, future albums that are in the can at the moment, ready for release, include stuff with the sax player Stacey Dillard, which I'm just mixing down now, and one with Jason Marshall, who plays tenor sax on this recording. It's an organ quartet recording, but he's best known for playing baritone sax with Mingus Big Band and used to play with Roy Hargrove. So my Bandcamp's the best place to really find that stuff. There will be some more stuff going out on general release on all platforms. Greenpoint was originally released pretty much soon after recording, but there was an issue with credits on TuneCore, so I had to delete it from the internet. Only now, am I able to put it back out there, and I just felt that it was important to do that rather than leave it in the can, because you've got Will Vinson, Matt Penman, and Bruce Cox on that record with me. Admittedly, I got to New York pretty much straight before recording it. It was quite important to me in terms of the music that we made on that date. The circumstances, the fact that friendship was involved as well, that Matt introduced me to Will Vinson on that session, and then Will went on to play sax on the record that I was able to release during lockdown. Greenpoint, it's a one-off. It was a one-off session, but the interaction, I think, was cool. And I don't think you're going to hear Matt and Will playing a lot of funk type stuff, which forms a large part of that album.
Right on, Dan. Hey, man, thank you for reaching out. Thank you for opening up. It's a wonderful album. Good luck with it and with the future projects as we move forward here in 2023.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, England, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Dan for his class, cool, and time. If you want to hear more interviews, you can find Neon Jazz archived interviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to theneonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.